The scream tore from Elena's throat before she was fully awake, her hands clawing at the empty sheets beside her. "Don't! Please don't go!" But the bedroom door was already closing, and through the frosted window she could see the silhouette of Viktor Volkov disappearing into the howling darkness, snow whipping sideways in the pre-dawn chaos. 4 a.m, and he was walking away. Again. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs as she stumbled out of bed, her bare feet hitting the cold hardwood floor. The nightmare was still fresh in her mind, Viktor lying motionless in a pool of crimson, his steel-gray eyes staring at nothing. It had felt so real. Too real. She'd known what she was getting into when she married him 6 months ago, or at least she thought she had. Viktor Volkov wasn't just another businessman in Chicago's elite circles. He was the kind of man mothers warned their daughters about, the kind whose name made grown men go pale and change the subject. He controlled half the city's underground operations, commanded loyalty through fear and respect in equal measure, and had never, not once in his 42 years, let anyone see him vulnerable. Until her. Elena Whitmore had been a third-grade teacher from a nice suburb, the kind of woman who baked cookies for school fundraisers and believed in the fundamental goodness of people. She'd met Viktor at a charity gala she'd been dragged to by her friend Sarah. He'd been standing alone near the bar, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else, his expensive suit doing nothing to soften the dangerous edge that surrounded him like an aura. Their eyes had met across the room, and something had shifted in the universe. 3 months later, they were married in a private ceremony that her mother still hadn't forgiven her for. "He's too old for you," her mother had said. "He's too dangerous. You don't know what you're doing, Elena." Maybe she hadn't, but she'd loved him anyway, loved him with a ferocity that surprised even herself. Now, standing in their bedroom while the grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 4 times, Elena felt that love twist into something sharp and painful in her chest. Because this wasn't the first time Viktor had left in the middle of the night. It wasn't even the 5th. And every time he came back, if he came back, there was a little less light in his eyes, a few more shadows clinging to his shoulders. She grabbed her phone from the nightstand with shaking hands. No messages, no explanation, nothing. The house felt enormous and empty around her, all those rooms Viktor had insisted they needed, the massive estate on the North Shore that was more fortress than home. Security cameras everywhere except the bedroom. "Your privacy is sacred," he'd told her firmly, and guards stationed at every entrance. Guards who would die for Viktor, who answered to him, and him alone. Guards who wouldn't tell her a damn thing about where he'd gone, or why. Elena wrapped her robe around herself and descended the sweeping staircase, her mind racing. The nightmare's images kept flashing behind her eyelids. Viktor bleeding. Viktor dying. Viktor gone forever because she hadn't been strong enough, smart enough. Enough. She found Marcus in the kitchen, Viktor's head of security, a mountain of a man with kind eyes, and a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. He was making coffee, and he looked up when she entered, guilt written all over his face. "Mrs. Volkov," he said quietly, "you should be sleeping." "Where is he, Marcus?" Elena's voice came out steadier than she felt. "And don't tell me it's business. Not at 4 a.m. in a snowstorm. Not without even waking me to say goodbye." Marcus poured her a cup of coffee she hadn't asked for, buying time. When he finally met her eyes, she saw something there that made her blood run cold. "Pity." "There was a call," Marcus said slowly, "about an hour ago. I can't tell you more than that, Elena. I'm sorry. Can't or won't. Both." He set the coffee down in front of her. "Viktor's orders. He wants you protected, which means keeping you out of it." Elena's hands clenched around the warm mug. Protected. Like I'm made of glass. Like I'm some delicate thing that needs to be locked away while he throws himself into danger. "He loves you," Marcus said simply, "more than I've ever seen him love anything. And that terrifies him." The words should have warmed her. Instead, they made her want to scream again. because she'd seen this pattern developing over the past few months. Victor pulling away, becoming more distant, keeping her at arm's length even when he was holding her close. She'd catch him watching her sometimes with such intensity it stole her breath, but when she'd ask what he was thinking, he'd just shake his head and change the subject. Last week she'd overheard him on the phone in his study. "No," he'd said, his voice hard as granite. "She's not to be touched. She's not part of this world. If anyone even looks at her wrong, I'll burn their entire operation to the ground." She'd felt a chill then, understanding for the first time what it really meant to be Viktor Volkov's wife. Not just the luxury and the protection, but the target. The bullseye painted on her back simply because he'd chosen her. And now he was out there in a blizzard, dealing with God knew what, and she was supposed to just sit here and drink coffee and wait like a good little wife. The hell with that. Elena stood up abruptly, startling Marcus. "I need my phone records from the house line. Can you access those?" "Mrs. Volkov? Can you access them, Marcus?" He studied her for a long moment, and she saw the exact second he made his decision. With a slight nod, he pulled out his tablet and tapped a few times. The call came from a blocked number, but it pinged off a cell tower near the old harbor district, the warehouse area. Elena's mind was already working. She'd grown up in Chicago, knew the city like the back of her hand. The harbor district warehouses had been abandoned for years, a wasteland of rusted metal and broken dreams that the city kept promising to redevelop. It was also, she'd heard Victor mention once in passing, neutral territory in the complicated web of Chicago's criminal underworld. Neutral territory meant meeting place, meant negotiation, or trap. "I'm going," Elena said. "Absolutely not." Marcus stepped between her and the door, and despite his kindness, she could see the immovable wall of loyalty to Victor in his stance. "He'd kill me himself if I let you anywhere near there." "Then come with me. Protect me. That's your job, isn't it?" "My job is to follow Victor's orders." Elena felt frustration rising in her throat like bile. She was so tired of being protected, of being kept in the dark, of being treated like she couldn't handle the reality of Victor's world. She'd made her choice when she married him. She'd chosen him with her eyes open, or as open as they could be, and she was done being left behind. "Fine," she said, turning back toward the stairs. "Then I'll go alone." She made it 3 steps before Marcus's heavy sigh stopped her. "I'll take you within 2 blocks, he said finally. "But you stay in the car. You see what you need to see from a distance, and then we come straight back. Agreed?" Elena wanted to argue, wanted to demand more, but she could see she'd pushed Marcus as far as he would go. Agreed. 20 minutes later, she was bundled in her warmest coat, sitting in the passenger seat of Marcus's SUV as they drove through streets that looked apocalyptic in the snowstorm. The city was completely shut down, not another car in sight, the streetlights creating halos of golden light in the swirling white. Elena's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Girl, you okay? Saw the weather and thought of you alone in that big house." If only Sarah knew. Elena silenced her phone without responding. The warehouse district loomed ahead, dark and menacing. Marcus slowed the SUV, his eyes scanning the shadows with professional precision. "There," he said quietly, pointing. Elena followed his gaze and felt her heart stop. 3 black cars were parked in front of the largest warehouse, their lights off but engines running, exhaust visible in the freezing air. And standing between them, facing a group of men she didn't recognize, was Victor. Even from a distance, even through the snow, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the predatory stillness that meant he was one wrong word away from violence. He was wearing the long black coat she'd given him for Christmas, and his silver hair, so distinguished she'd always thought, going gray so young, was getting covered in snow. "Who are those men?" Elena whispered. Marcus's jaw tightened. Karpov's people. Roman Karpov, specifically. He's been trying to muscle in on Victor's territory for months. Smart, ruthless. And he doesn't follow the old rules. What old rules? The ones that say families are off limits. Elena felt ice that had nothing to do with the temperature spreading through her veins. He threatened me. It wasn't a question. Marcus's silence was answer enough. Through the snow, she watched Victor take a step forward, and even though she couldn't hear the words, she could read the danger in his body language. This was Viktor Volkov at his most lethal. The man who had built an empire through sheer force of will and a reputation that preceded him like a shockwave. One of Karpov's men moved, reaching for something inside his coat, and Elena's scream caught in her throat. But Victor was faster. In a movement so quick she almost missed it, he had the man disarmed and on his knees, Victor's gun pressed against the back of his head. The other men froze, and for a long moment nobody moved. Then Victor spoke, and even though Elena couldn't hear him, she saw Karpov's face go pale. Marcus started the engine. "We need to go. Now." "No, wait. Elena, this is about to get messy, and Victor will never forgive me if you see what comes next." But Elena couldn't look away. She watched Victor release the man, watched him say something else to Karpov that made the other man's hands clench into fists. Then Victor turned and walked back to his car, his back exposed, his movements unhurried and controlled. It was a power play, Elena realized. A statement. "I'm so dangerous that I can turn my back on you and you won't dare touch me." The black cars pulled away one by one, and only when they were gone did Victor's shoulders drop slightly. The only sign of the tension he'd been holding. Marcus drove them home in silence, and Elena sat with her hands pressed against the window, trying to process what she'd witnessed. The violence that lived just beneath Victor's surface. The world he navigated every day, the constant calculation of threat and response that must exhaust him in ways she couldn't begin to understand. By the time they got back to the house, dawn was breaking, turning the snow from white to pink to gold. Elena went straight to the bedroom and climbed back into bed, her mind racing. She dozed off when she heard the front door open downstairs, heard Victor's heavy footsteps on the stairs. The bedroom door opened, and there he was, snow melting in his hair, his face drawn with exhaustion. Their eyes met, and Elena saw guilt flash across his features. "You followed me," he said quietly. "It wasn't a question. Marcus told you. Marcus didn't have to tell me. I saw his car." Victor crossed to the window, looking out at the winter wonderland their property had become. "You shouldn't have come, Elena. And you shouldn't have left without saying goodbye." Elena sat up, pulling the blankets around her. "Victor, we need to talk about this. About what's happening." "Nothing's happening. Don't lie to me. I'm not a child and I'm not stupid. Something's been wrong for weeks, and tonight proved it." "Who was that man? Karpov?" Victor's hands clenched on the windowsill. "You shouldn't know that name." "Well, I do. Marcus told me. He threatened me, didn't he? That's what this is about. That's why you've been pulling away. Treating me like I'm made of spun sugar. I'm not discussing this." "The hell you're not." Elena threw back the covers and crossed to him, her anger finally overriding her fear. "I married you, Victor. I chose this. I chose you, knowing what you are, knowing what it meant. And you don't get to shut me out because you're scared." He turned on her then, and she saw something raw and desperate in his eyes. "Scared?" His voice was low, dangerous. "You have no idea what scared means, Elena. You have no concept of what these men are capable of. Karpov isn't like the others. He doesn't care about honor or tradition or the old ways. He sees you as leverage, as a weakness he can exploit. And he's right. I'm not a weakness. You're the only weakness I have." The words exploded from him, louder than she'd ever heard him speak. "Do you understand that? For 42 years I've been untouchable, feared, respected. And then you walked into that gala in your blue dress with your ridiculous optimism and your belief that people are fundamentally good, and you destroyed me. You destroyed every defense I'd built, every wall I'd constructed. And now Karpov knows it. They all know it. They know that if they want to hurt me, all they have to do is touch you. Elena felt tears stinging her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. So what's your solution? Push me away? Make me live in this beautiful prison while you face danger alone? Die alone? If it keeps you safe? I don't want to be safe. Her voice broke on the words. I want to be with you. I want to be your partner, not your possession. I want you to trust me enough to let me stand beside you, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Victor stared at her, and she saw the war happening behind his eyes. The man who'd survived by trusting no one, needing no one, warring with the man who'd fallen impossibly, irrevocably in love. I can't lose you, he whispered finally. Elena, I can't. It would break something in me that can't be fixed. She crossed the remaining distance between them and took his face in her hands, feeling the stubble rough against her palms. Then stop trying to lose me. Stop pushing me away. Let me in, Victor. All the way in. Stop treating our marriage like it's temporary. Like I'm going to wake up one day and realize I made a mistake. You did make a mistake, he said, but his hands came up to cover hers, holding them against his face. You should have married some nice teacher. Someone who'd give you the safe, normal life you deserve. I don't want safe and normal. I want you. Scars and danger and middle-of-the-night phone calls and all of it. I want you. Something cracked in Victor's expression, and suddenly he was kissing her with a desperation that stole her breath. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, and she could feel him trembling. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead against hers. I met with Karpov tonight to end this, he said quietly, to make it crystal clear that any move against you would result in consequences he couldn't survive. I made promises I shouldn't have made, concessions that will cost me, but it's done. He knows that touching you means war, and he's not ready for that war. What kind of concessions? Territory, money, things I can afford to lose. He pulled back to look at her, his steel-gray eyes intense. Things that mean nothing compared to you. Elena felt her heart crack open. Victor. I'm not good at this, he continued, at being vulnerable, at letting someone in. I've spent my whole life making sure no one could hurt me, and then you came along and made me want things I thought I'd never have. A home, a partner, someone to come back to. You have me, Elena said softly. You've always had me. But you have to let me have you too. All of you, not just the parts you think are acceptable. Victor was quiet for a long moment, his hands still cupping her face. Then he said, The nightmare you had. You were screaming for me not to go. I dreamed you died, that I lost you. I'm harder to kill than that. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. But I understand the fear now. For years, death was just another business risk, something I planned for and mitigated. Now, every risk I take, I think of you waking up alone. I think of you at my funeral, crying for a man who wasn't worth your tears. And it makes me hesitate, makes me second-guess every decision. Good, Elena said firmly. You should hesitate. You should come home. You should let your people handle the things that don't require you personally. You should stop acting like you're invincible because you're not Victor. You're human, and humans die, and I need you to fight like hell to keep that from happening. He kissed her again, softer this time, almost reverent. I don't deserve you. Maybe not, but you're stuck with me anyway. They stood there in the growing dawn light, wrapped in each other, and Elena felt something shift between them. A wall coming down, a bridge being built. I need to tell you something, Victor said finally, pulling back but keeping his hands on her waist. About why I've been distant, about what I've been planning. Elena waited, her heart pounding. I'm stepping back, he said, from the business. Not immediately, not all at once, but I'm putting things in motion to transition my interests to legitimate enterprises. It'll take years, and it'll be dangerous, There will be people who see it as weakness, who will try to take advantage. But I've spent my whole adult life in the shadows, Elena. And I'm tired. I'm tired of looking over my shoulder, tired of making decisions that cost lives, tired of being the monster in other people's nightmares. What changed? Elena asked, though she thought she knew. You. Victor's smile was sad. You changed everything. I look at you, and I see a future I never thought I could have. Children, maybe, someday. Growing old together. Boring Sunday mornings reading the paper. All those normal things I used to mock. He paused, his expression growing serious. But more than that, I see a woman who deserves a husband, who comes home every night, who doesn't have blood on his hands, who can give her the life she should have had all along. Tears were streaming down Elena's face now. I don't need you to change who you are. I know, but I need to change. For me, for us, for the man I want to be when you look at me. Elena threw her arms around his neck, holding him tight. She could feel his heartbeat against her chest, steady and strong. We'll do it together, she whispered. Whatever comes, we face it together. No more secrets, no more shutting me out. Partners. Partners, Victor agreed, his arms tightening around her. Though I reserve the right to be overprotective sometimes. Old habits die hard. I can live with overprotective, Elena said, pulling back to look at him. As long as you can live with me refusing to be treated like fragile porcelain. Deal. He kissed her forehead. Now can we please go back to bed? I'm exhausted, and it's our first day as actual partners. I'd like to spend it sleeping next to my wife. Elena smiled and led him to the bed, both of them climbing under the covers. Victor pulled her against his chest, his chin resting on top of her head, and for the first time in weeks, Elena felt him truly relax. Victor? She said softly. Next time you get a call in the middle of the night, wake me up. Even if you can't tell me everything, at least let me know you're going. Let me say goodbye, just in case. His arms tightened around her. There won't be many more calls like that. But yes, I promise. They drifted off to sleep as the snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the world in white. And when Elena dreamed this time, it wasn't of death and loss. It was of Victor coming home, always coming home, walking through the door with snow in his hair and love in his eyes. The months that followed were harder than Elena had anticipated. Victor's transition away from his criminal empire wasn't smooth or simple. There were challenges from rivals who saw opportunity in his withdrawal, late-night meetings that couldn't be avoided, and moments where Elena saw the weight of it all pressing down on him. But there were victories, too. Small ones at first, Victor making it home for dinner 3 nights in a row. Then bigger ones, a legitimate business deal closing. A section of his old territory transferred peacefully to trusted associates who would maintain the fragile balance of power. And through it all, Victor kept his promise. He woke her before he left. He told her what he could. He let her in. One evening in April, 6 months after the snowstorm, they were having dinner on their terrace, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. Spring had transformed their property into something magical, and Elena had spent the afternoon planting flowers in beds that had been empty since they'd moved in. Victor had been quiet through dinner, and Elena had learned to read his silences. This one was contemplative, not troubled. "What are you thinking?" she asked, reaching across the table to take his hand. He turned her hand over in his, studying it like he was memorizing every detail. "I was thinking about that gala, where we met, how I almost didn't go." "What made you change your mind?" Marcus insisted. "Said I needed to maintain appearances, show my face in legitimate society." Victor smiled slightly. "I was going to stay for 20 minutes and leave, and then I saw you." "I was so nervous that night," Elena admitted. "Sarah had dragged me there and I felt completely out of place. All those wealthy people in their designer clothes, and me in a dress I'd bought on sale. You were the most beautiful woman in the room." Victor's voice was soft but certain. And when you smiled at that waiter who spilled champagne near you, when you told him it was fine and not to worry, I knew I was in trouble. Because I was nice to a waiter? Because you were kind in a room full of sharks? Because you saw him as a person, not as help? Because you were so fundamentally good, and I wanted that goodness near me, even though I knew I didn't deserve it. He raised her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. I still don't deserve it, but I'm grateful for it every single day. Elena felt tears pricking her eyes again. Victor had become more open with his feelings over the past months, but it still caught her off guard sometimes, the depth of emotion from a man who'd spent decades teaching himself not to feel. You deserve more than you think, she said softly. Victor stood, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. They swayed there on the terrace, dancing to music only they could hear, as the sun dipped below the horizon. Elena Volkov, he murmured against her hair. My wife, my partner, my salvation. She pulled back to look at him, seeing her own love reflected in his eyes. And you're mine. All of it. The good, the bad, the dangerous, the gentle. All of it is mine, and I'm never letting go. Good, Victor said. Because I'd hunt you down if you tried to leave. Elena laughed. That's probably the most romantic threat I've ever received. I'm a work in progress. But he was smiling, really smiling, in a way that made him look years younger. They stood there as darkness fell, wrapped in each other's arms, and Elena thought about that morning in the snowstorm, how she'd woken up screaming, terrified of loss, how Victor had walked into danger rather than pull her into it, how they'd both been trying to protect each other in ways that only pushed them apart, and how they'd found their way back to each other anyway, because that's what partners did. They stumbled, they fought, they made mistakes, but they kept choosing each other, kept fighting for each other, kept building something stronger than either of them could create alone. No more nightmares, Victor said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. I come home now, every time. That's my promise to you. Elena tilted her face up for a kiss. And I'll be here waiting. Every time. That's mine to you. As promises went, they were simple ones. But they were enough. More than enough. They were everything. The call came 3 weeks later at 2 p.m. on a Thursday. Elena was in the kitchen trying a new recipe, flour dusting her hands, when her phone buzzed with a number she didn't recognize. Mrs. Volkov? The voice was young, female, terrified. My name is Sophie. I work at Mercy General Hospital. Your husband asked me to call you. Elena's heart stopped. What happened? There was an incident. He's been shot. He's stable, but the phone slipped from Elena's hands, clattering against the counter. Shot. Victor had been shot. All those promises about coming home, about being safe, and now he was bleeding in a hospital somewhere, while she stood in their kitchen covered in flour like an idiot. Marcus appeared in the doorway before she could even call for him, his face grim. He'd obviously gotten the same call. Car's ready. Let's go. The drive to Mercy General was a blur. Elena couldn't stop shaking, couldn't form coherent thoughts beyond Victor's name, repeated like a prayer. Marcus drove with controlled urgency, weaving through traffic, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. What happened? She managed finally. Who did this? I don't know yet. Victor was meeting with Dmitry Kozlov, one of his old associates, someone who was supposed to be an ally. That's all I have right now. The hospital came into view, and Marcus pulled up to the emergency entrance. Elena was out of the car before it fully stopped, running through the automatic doors into the fluorescent-lit chaos of the ER. A nurse tried to stop her, but Marcus was right behind her, flashing something that made the nurse step aside immediately. "Third floor, private wing," the nurse said quickly. Elena ran for the elevators, Marcus keeping pace beside her. Her mind was spinning with worst-case scenarios, each one more terrible than the last. Victor dying on an operating table. Victor paralyzed. Victor changed forever, the light gone from his eyes. The elevator doors opened on the 3rd floor, and Elena saw armed men stationed in the hallway, Victor's people, there to protect him even now. They parted to let her through, and she burst into the private room at the end of the corridor. Victor was sitting up in bed, his shirt off, a bandage wrapped around his left shoulder. His face was pale but alert, and when he saw her, relief and guilt warred in his expression. "Elena." She crossed to him in 3 strides and slapped him, hard. The sound echoed in the quiet room. Victor's head turned with the force of it, and for a moment, nobody moved. Then Elena burst into tears, her anger dissolving into terror and relief. "You promised," she sobbed. "You promised you'd come home. You promised it was getting safer. You promised—" Victor caught her wrist gently, pulling her down onto the bed beside him. His good arm wrapped around her, holding her against his chest while she cried. "I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. What happened?" She pulled back, wiping her eyes, trying to get control of herself. "Sophie said you were shot. Was it Kozlov?" "No." Victor's voice was hard. "It was a kid. Couldn't have been more than 19. Walked into the restaurant where Dmitri and I were having lunch, pulled out a cheap pistol, and started shooting. Got me in the shoulder before my people took him down." Elena felt cold spreading through her veins. "Why? Was he sent by someone?" "That's what we're trying to figure out." Victor touched her face with his good hand, his thumb wiping away her tears. "Elena, listen to me. I'm fine. It's a through and through, missed everything important. I'll be sore for a few weeks, but I'm fine. You're not fine. You were shot. Someone tried to kill you." "Someone always wants to kill me," Victor said with dark humor. "It comes with the territory." "Don't." Elena's voice shook. "Don't make jokes. Not about this. Not when I got that call and thought—" Her voice broke. "I thought I'd lost you. I thought I'd have to plan your funeral and figure out how to live in a world where you don't exist. And I couldn't breathe, Victor. I couldn't breathe." His expression crumpled, and he pulled her close again, pressing his lips to her hair. "I'm here. I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere." Marcus appeared in the doorway, his phone in his hand. "Victor, we have information." "Not now, Marcus." "It's important. The kid, his name was Tommy Reeves. Dimitri's people questioned him before the police arrived. He was hired through an intermediary, given $5,000 and a photo. Your photo, specifically. He was told you'd be alone." Elena felt Victor's body tense against her. "Someone knew where I'd be. Someone close." "It gets worse." Marcus's expression was grim. "Tommy said the person who hired him told him you'd killed his brother. Fed him some story about you being a monster who needed to be stopped. The kid thought he was being a hero." "Whose brother?" Victor's voice had gone dangerously quiet. "We're working on that. But Victor, if someone's using civilians, if they're recruiting people outside the usual channels, then the rules have changed," Victor finished. "And Elena's at risk." "I'm right here," Elena said sharply. "Stop talking about me like I'm not in the room. And if I'm at risk, then we deal with it. Together. Like you promised." Victor looked at her, and she saw the struggle happening behind his eyes again. The instinct to protect her warring with his promise to treat her as a partner. "Together," he said finally. "But you need to understand what that means. If someone's targeting me through civilians, through people who think they're doing the right thing, then this is a different kind of war. I can't predict it, can't control it the way I controlled the old threats. Then we adapt." Elena forced her voice to steady, forced herself to think instead of just feel. "We figure out who's behind this and we stop them. But we do it smart, and we do it together, and you stop trying to handle everything alone." Marcus cleared his throat. "There's something else. The intermediary who hired Tommy. The kid gave us a description. White male, late 30s, expensive suit, British accent. That sound familiar to anyone?" Elena saw Victor's face go absolutely white. "No, it can't be." "Who?" Elena demanded. "James Morrison. Victor's voice was hollow. My former business partner in London. We had a falling out 5 years ago over methods and ethics, if you can believe that. He wanted to expand into human trafficking. I drew the line. We went our separate ways, or so I thought. Why would he come after you now? Because I'm vulnerable now. Victor's jaw clenched. Because he knows about you. Because he sees my transition to legitimate business as betrayal, as weakness. James believes in the old ways, loyalty until death, the organization above everything. He would see what I'm doing as abandoning the life, abandoning the code. Marcus stepped fully into the room. If it's Morrison, this is bigger than we thought. He has resources, connections across Europe. He could make this very messy. Then we make it messier for him. Elena surprised herself with the steel in her voice. Victor, you said you wanted to go legitimate. You said you were tired of living in the shadows. Well, here's your chance to prove it. We don't fight Morrison in the dark. We bring everything into the light. Both men stared at her. What are you suggesting? Victor asked slowly. I'm suggesting we go to the FBI. We give them everything you have on Morrison, his operations, his contacts, his crimes. We make a deal. You provide testimony, you cooperate fully, and in exchange, you get immunity and protection. We end this the legal way. Elena, that's... Marcus started. Insane? Elena cut him off. Dangerous? Maybe, but it's also the only way forward if Victor really wants out. You can't half leave this world. You're either in or you're out, and if you're out, you need to make sure the people left in can't touch you. Legal protection is the only real protection. Victor was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes studying her face. You've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about a lot of things. Elena took his hand, lacing their fingers together. I've been thinking about what it means to really leave, to really build a new life. And I don't think you can do it by just stepping back and hoping everyone respects your boundaries. Morrison proved that today. You need actual, legal, ironclad protection. And yes, that means giving up information on people you used to work with. But Victor, those people aren't your friends. They're not your family. I'm your family. She saw something shift in his expression, saw the moment he understood what she was really saying. This wasn't just about Morrison. It was about making a clean break, burning the bridges, choosing a side definitively and completely. It'll make me a target, Victor said quietly. A rat. There are people who would spend everything they have to kill me for cooperating with the feds. There are already people trying to kill you, at least this way. You'd have the full weight of the federal government protecting you, protecting us. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Victor, she's right. I hate to say it, but she's right. Morrison won't stop with one attempt. And if he's recruiting civilians, turning you into a villain in their eyes, he could send a dozen more kids like Tommy. You can't protect against that, not long term. Victor looked between them, and Elena could see the years of survival instinct fighting against this new path. Everything in his training, his experience, told him that cooperating with law enforcement was suicide. But everything in his heart, everything he'd become since meeting her, told him it was the only way forward. I need to think, he said finally. No. Elena's voice was firm. You need to decide. Right now. Because every hour we wait is an hour Morrison has to plan his next move. Every day you hesitate is another day we're vulnerable. I love you, Victor. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. But I will not spend our lives looking over our shoulders, jumping at every shadow, wondering if today is the day someone succeeds where Tommy failed. I won't live like that, and I won't watch you die because you were too proud to ask for help. The room went completely silent. Elena could hear her own heartbeat, could feel Victor's pulse where her fingers pressed against his wrist. Then Victor lifted their joined hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles softly. You're the bravest person I've ever met, he said quietly. And you're right. About all of it. I've been trying to have it both ways. Leave the life but keep the reputation. Step back but maintain control. And it's not working. It's never going to work. He turned to Marcus. Get me a phone, the secure one. I need to make some calls. Victor, I'm doing this, Marcus. Elena's right. It's time to choose a side and commit to it completely. Get me Agent Sarah Chen at the FBI. We've had dealings before. She'll know what this means. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but he nodded and left the room. Elena sagged with relief, only then realizing how much tension she'd been holding. Are you sure? She asked softly. Victor pulled her closer, mindful of his injured shoulder. I've never been more sure of anything except marrying you. This is the right move. It's the only move. And whatever comes after, the threats, the trials, the target on my back, we'll face it together. Like you said, partners. Partners, Elena echoed, and kissed him gently. The next hours were a whirlwind. Agent Chen arrived within 90 minutes, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who listened to Victor's proposal with an expression that gave nothing away. She made phone calls, consulted with superiors, and finally presented Victor with an initial agreement. Full cooperation in exchange for immunity from prosecution for his past crimes. Witness protection for both him and Elena. Relocation assistance. New identities if necessary. Federal protection during the investigation and trial. Victor signed without hesitation. By evening, the room was filled with federal agents taking his statement, documenting everything he knew about Morrison and dozens of other criminal organizations. Victor talked for hours, his voice never wavering, laying bare decades of secrets and connections. Elena sat beside him the whole time, her hand in his, silently supporting him as he dismantled the empire he'd spent his life building. When the agents finally left, promising to return the next morning to continue, Victor looked exhausted. The painkillers they'd given him for his shoulder were making him drowsy, and Elena could see him fighting to stay awake. Sleep, she told him gently. I'll be right here. Don't leave. His words were slurring slightly. Promise you won't leave. Never. I'm not going anywhere. Elena settled into the chair beside his bed, still holding his hand. I'll be here when you wake up, and the day after that, and every day after. That's my promise. Victor's eyes drifted closed, and within minutes, his breathing had evened out into sleep. Elena watched him in the dim hospital light, this dangerous man who'd given up everything for her, who'd chosen love over power, partnership over control. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Oh my God, are you okay? Marcus told me what happened. Elena typed back with her free hand. I'm okay. We're okay. It's a long story, but everything's going to be fine. And for the first time in months, she actually believed it. The morning sun streaming through the hospital window found them still there. Victor sleeping peacefully, Elena dozing in the chair, their hands linked between them. Marcus had stayed too, sleeping sitting up outside the door, keeping watch like always. When Victor woke, the first thing he did was squeeze Elena's hand. She opened her eyes immediately, and they looked at each other in the soft morning light. Still here, she said with a small smile. Still here, he agreed. Then, quieter, thank you for saving me, for knowing what I needed even when I didn't. That's what partners do. We save each other. Elena stood and leaned over to kiss him softly. Now let's finish this. Let's give them everything, take Morrison down, and start building that boring, normal life you promised me. Sunday mornings with the newspaper and all. Victor smiled, really smiled, and Elena saw in his eyes not the feared Mafia boss who'd ruled Chicago's underworld, but simply the man she loved. The man who'd chosen her. The man who was finally, truly coming home. Together, Victor said. Together, Elena promised. And this time, she knew neither of them would ever have to face the darkness alone again.